What you shared with her wasn't ordinary. It wasn't just chemistry, attraction, or timing. It was divine alignment. You were sent into her life not just to love her, but to awaken something sacred within her. And for a while, it worked. She saw the difference. She felt the peace. Your presence made her question the pain she had normalized. But divine love is not passive. It invites transformation. And somewhere along the way, she realized that being loved by you would require her to confront what she spent her whole life hiding from: the pain, the patterns, the people, the pride. And when the moment came to choose, she didn't choose you. She chose the comfort of what she already knew, even if it meant walking away from what heaven was offering her. You've been wrestling with that choice, asking yourself what you could have done differently, wondering why someone would walk away from a love that came from such a holy place. But this isn't about your worth. It's about her wounds. She wasn't ready for the kind of love that demands healing. She didn't reject you because you were wrong. She rejected you because your presence made it impossible for her to stay the same. And instead of rising, she retreated. Instead of surrendering, she shut down. And the truth is, she didn't just walk away from you. She walked away from her own deliverance, from her own destiny. And now, heaven is showing you the bigger picture. Before we go deeper, I want you to seal something in the spirit. If this message is already touching a place that words usually can't reach, I want you to write in the comments right now: I release what chose the shadows. That's your declaration of freedom. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Because this isn't just a story of heartbreak, it's a story of awakening, of seeing things clearly, of letting go of what couldn't hold the light. And what you're about to receive in this message will set your heart free. She knew something was different from the moment she met you. It wasn't just your words, it was your spirit. You carried peace she couldn't explain, clarity that unsettled her chaos, and love that didn't demand performance. And for a moment, she allowed herself to feel it, to imagine what it would be like to live outside the cycles she had known for so long. But healing is scary when pain has been your home, and freedom feels like a threat when bondage is familiar. The love you brought wasn't just romantic, it was disruptive, because it didn't just want her presence, it wanted her transformation. She wasn't used to a love that required honesty, the kind of love that sees beyond the mask and still says, "You are worthy," the kind that holds space for growth without accepting stagnation. And that scared her, because she had spent years building walls to survive, walls that kept out pain, but also kept out purpose. And you were purpose. You were God's way of reminding her that she was made for more. But instead of running toward it, she froze. And slowly, she started to sabotage what was sacred, not because she didn't feel it, but because she didn't feel ready for it. Inside, a war had begun. One part of her longed for you, not just emotionally, but spiritually. But the other part, the part shaped by trauma, pride, and fear, couldn't let go of the shadows. You didn't trigger her trauma, you exposed it. And that's why she started distancing herself, creating confusion, sending mixed signals, blaming you for things you didn't do. Because when someone isn't ready for light, they'll find a way to make it feel wrong. And that's what you became in her life. A mirror she wasn't prepared to look into. The shift, The tension in her tone, the way her presence felt unstable, even when her words tried to sound steady. You could feel her soul pulling back, even if her hands were still reaching forward. And as you tried to hold space, to understand, to be patient, it began to cost you. You questioned your instincts. You softened your truth. You tried to shrink your light just to make her feel safe. But divine love was never meant to dim itself for human comfort. And God began to show you she wasn't leaving you. She was retreating from her calling. She didn't walk away because you were too much. She walked away because you made her realize how much she was ignoring within herself. You weren't just a partner. You were a divine disruption. And while her heart may have felt drawn to you, her mind was still loyal to the pain. She missed the dysfunction that didn't require growth, the people who didn't challenge her truth, the cycles where she could stay numb and in control. But with you, there was no hiding. With you, everything dark began to surface, and she wasn't ready for that kind of confrontation, even if it came through love. So instead of surrendering, she returned to what was familiar, to the emotional attachments that didn't ask for healing, to the environments that didn't challenge her masks, to the people who didn't require accountability, because the light of divine love will either purify or expose, and she wasn't ready for either. And though you felt the loss, heaven was protecting you, because God knew what you were carrying was sacred, and what she chose to walk away from wasn't just you. It was the presence of God that surrounded you. The enemy saw what was happening. He saw the love you carried, the covering, the peace, and he panicked. Because when a soul like hers starts to taste divine alignment, hell starts to lose its grip. So the attacks began. Whispers of doubt, distractions disguised as opportunity, emotional warfare dressed up as logic. And slowly, she began to listen. Not to you, not to God, but to the voices that knew how to trigger her old identity. They reminded her of who she used to be. They made the light feel like pressure, and darkness like home. People around her began to echo those lies. They called you too spiritual, too deep, too intense. They told her to protect herself, not from harm, but from healing. They told her you were trying to change her, that you wanted to control her. But what you offered wasn't control. It was truth. You didn't want her obedience. You wanted her freedom. But freedom demands a death to the false self. And she wasn't ready to bury that version yet. So she aligned with voices that gave her permission to stay broken, just because it felt familiar. The spirit realm was shifting. And while you were fasting, praying, and asking God to protect the connection, she was entertaining the very energies that came to kill it. Spirits of confusion, spirits of sabotage, spirits of pride. And because her soul was still open to those frequencies, they gained access. Not because she was evil, but because she hadn't yet surrendered. And what she didn't realize is that love without surrender isn't safety. It's delay. She was delaying her own deliverance. She started doubting your motives, questioning your discernment, rejecting your vision. Not because it wasn't real, but because it scared her. You represented everything she asked for in secret, but everything she ran from in silence. You were God's answer, but she was still entertaining the questions sent by the enemy. And while you waited for her to choose the light, she was choosing her triggers, choosing her trauma, choosing her shadow self over the new identity that was trying to emerge. It was never really about you. It was about what you activated, what your presence awakened, and what that light revealed. She had spent years learning how to hide her wounds behind performance, but divine love sees through all of it. And you saw her, not just the version she curated, but the soul she tried to silence. And being seen like that scared her more than being hurt ever did. Because when you're used to chaos, peace feels like vulnerability, and she wasn't ready to live without the chaos she had once called home. So she went back to the familiar conversations that didn't require her to grow, back to the relationships where she could stay in control, back to the silence that never asked her to speak her truth. And the most painful part? You watched her do it. You saw her pick the version of herself that God was asking her to bury. You saw her walk away from healing, not because it wasn't offered, but because it felt too expensive. And the price was giving up who she thought she was. And while it broke your heart, it also opened your eyes. Because now you see, it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. God allowed her to step away, not to punish you, but to protect you from carrying someone who was never ready to walk, from bleeding for someone who refused to be healed, from anchoring your destiny to someone still in love with her chains. She didn't leave because you weren't enough. She left because your love made her confront what she wasn't yet willing to change. You tried everything you could, didn't you? You stayed when it hurt. You prayed when you didn't understand. You fasted when you felt the atmosphere shift. You covered her in love even when her actions turned cold. And deep down, a part of you knew she was slipping. But your hope held on longer than your peace. Because when you carry divine love, you don't walk away at the first sign of resistance. You fight, you intercede, you believe. But here's what God is showing you now. No matter how much love you give, it cannot override someone's will. And her will chose retreat. Her soul made a choice long before her words did. And heaven saw it. She didn't walk away in a single moment. It was gradual, slow, subtle. She started questioning things she used to admire about you, started blaming you for the emotional tension that was really coming from within her. You became too intense, too deep, too spiritual, not because you changed, but because her spirit was no longer at peace in the presence of what convicted her. And slowly, she stopped showing up with her heart. Her energy became divided, her voice more distant, her presence inconsistent. You kept loving her as she faded, but God was already preparing your heart to let go of what refused to grow. And in that letting go, you started to see what you couldn't before. That it wasn't about whether or not she loved you. It was about whether or not she was ready for the kind of love that would require her to become new. She loved the version of you that made her feel safe. But when your purpose started speaking louder than your patience, she ran. Because divine love doesn't just hold, it convicts, it calls, it confronts. And she wasn't ready to face the truth that your presence carried. So she returned to the places where she could still pretend to be whole, even if it meant walking away from the only love that actually saw her. He watched you wrestle with loyalty and clarity. He heard every prayer where you begged him to change her heart, to bring her back, to show her what you already knew. But God doesn't force transformation. And the longer you waited for her, the more you started to feel it, the weight of delay, the heaviness of spiritual imbalance. the grief of watching someone choose their old life over a divine future. And that grief wasn't punishment. It was your soul processing the reality that she had made her choice. Not just to walk away from you, but to stay in the shadows that your love tried to pull her out of. You never asked her to be perfect, only willing to grow, to surrender, to let go of what was dimming her spirit. But surrender felt like weakness to her, so she chose control in the dark over healing in the light. That's what broke the connection, not the absence of love, but the absence of surrender. And now you're left holding the remnants of a future she was too afraid to step into. But God affirms it was real. That's what makes it painful. Divine love rejected by a soul too guarded to receive it. Letting go doesn't mean you stopped loving her. It means you stopped waiting for her to become someone she isn't ready to be. You're not abandoning her. You're releasing her to the path she chose. You were never sent to save her, only to show her what salvation looks like. And you did. That's not failure. That's clarity. God is now closing the chapter, not to erase what was, but to free you from carrying someone unwilling to rise. This separation is not punishment, it's protection. God is preserving you, separating you from what would have drained your spirit and delayed your purpose. The guilt is not yours, it's a distraction. You loved her well, but now it's time to love yourself enough to move forward in peace. She didn't just walk away from you. She walked away from the divine covering she once felt through you. And now, your only job is to release her, to the one who can redeem her. You are being repositioned, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. The weight that sat on your heart is being lifted. The fog is clearing. The heaviness is breaking. You are beginning to see clearly, not just who she was, but who you are becoming. This heartbreak didn't break you. It revealed your depth, your capacity, your faithfulness. You didn't just survive her absence. You're beginning to understand it. And when understanding comes, so does healing. And with healing comes power. And with power comes your next divine connection. She said goodbye without explaining, left without honoring the depth of what you shared. But the silence was also part of the justice. Because if she had stayed, you would have spent the next season carrying a soul who wasn't aligned with your purpose. God saw what you couldn't, and while her words may have been absent, His voice never stopped speaking. And now it's declaring, you are free, not forgotten, not failed, free. And what looked like rejection was actually redirection. From the pain, from the delay, from the war you weren't meant to fight alone. This is the season where heaven rebuilds what was torn, where God takes the pieces of your heart and forms something stronger, where the love you poured out is not wasted, but replanted. Because divine love doesn't return void, it returns refined. And while she couldn't carry the weight of what was sacred, someone else will. Someone healed, someone willing, someone who won't just receive the light, but will walk with it. And when that moment comes, your soul will recognize that none of this was in vain. Purpose always births clarity. And now, what once felt like devastation is beginning to look like destiny. You didn't just lose someone, you found truth. You found God's voice. You found your strength. And most of all, you found peace in knowing that no one can take what was never truly theirs to begin with. what she walked away from, God is preserving for someone who will cherish it, and that someone will never ask you to shrink. You are no longer bound by her decision. You are no longer trapped in the timeline of what could have been. You are walking in the clarity of what is. And what is true now is this: her exit was the beginning of your rise. What felt like the end was actually an initiation, a shift from emotional attachment to spiritual awareness. And while your heart may still remember the softness of what you shared, your spirit now understands why it couldn't last. Because the version of her you loved no longer exists. She chose a path, and that path no longer includes your presence. And that's okay. There is sacred honor in your release. Not the kind the world celebrates, but the kind heaven never forgets. The honor of loving without bitterness, of letting go without vengeance, of forgiving without closure. Because true healing doesn't always come with answers. Sometimes it comes through obedience. And your obedience isn't about fixing or chasing anyone. It's about walking forward with an unburdened soul. God isn't asking you to carry someone else's refusal to grow. He's asking you to say yes to your own transformation, to your wholeness, to your next chapter. You're saying yes to peace. Yes to love that's mutual, safe, and spiritually aligned. You were never asking for perfection, just someone who would stay, someone who could hold your light without running. That kind of love still exists. It's not lost. The enemy didn't win. He simply exposed who wasn't ready. But heaven never stopped writing your story. And this next part? It's sacred. God is restoring your discernment, your peace, and your understanding of love. Now you can say, I still care, but I love truth more. That is the shift. That is what breaks the tie. That is what opens the door. You didn't lose yourself. You found your spirit. You're not waiting anymore. You're no longer bound to what couldn't stay. You are free, not with the kind of freedom that flees, but with the kind that feels like peace. That calms the questions and anchors your purpose. What she let go of is being restored to you, in higher form, into your divine timing. So let go of the past. Let go of the version of you that thought this was the end. The love coming won't require convincing. It will feel like home. And now, from a place of power, speak it. You're no longer bound. You're aligned. You're rising. And this is where the promise begins. God never wastes heartbreak, especially when it happens in the midst of purpose. What felt like abandonment was divine filtration. What looked like rejection was preservation. And what broke your heart was actually what saved your spirit. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't losing someone. It's staying connected to someone who resents the light you're called to carry. She didn't walk away because you failed. She walked away because your anointing revealed how far she was from surrender. And instead of falling on her knees, she ran into the arms of comfort. But you stayed faithful to the truth. And now, that faithfulness is being honored. Not with revenge, not with drama, but with clarity, elevation, and recompense. The same God who watched her walk away is now preparing someone who won't. The same God who saw your silence will now make your voice echo with authority. You were never meant to chase love. You were meant to reflect it, embody it, protect it. And now, because you chose obedience over obsession, truth over attachment, Heaven is opening a new dimension of restoration, and everything you gave in silence is coming back with glory. No more confusion, no more chasing ghosts, no more trying to resuscitate what God already buried. You are crossing over now into a season of divine recognition, where the right hearts will know your worth without you proving it, where your spirit will no longer be drained by someone else's indecision, where peace will feel normal, not rare, and where love will not pull you away from God, but lead you deeper into Him. That is the standard now, and you are finally ready to receive it. So let this word be your release. Your soul does not belong in the shadows. Your heart was not made to beg for love, and your spirit was never created to stay small, so someone else could feel secure. You are a mirror of God's presence on earth, and anyone who cannot honor that was never your partner, only your mirror. She reflected where she was, but now God is showing you who you are, and who you are is not broken, not lost, not abandoned, just becoming chosen. 1. If this message exposed something hidden and healed something silent inside you, I want you to seal it now in the comments. Write, I release what chose the shadows. Declare to the spirit realm that you are no longer bound by confusion or attachment. Like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, because what left your life didn't. Take your destiny with it. And what's rising in you now is too powerful to be denied. I want to thank everyone who supports us through Buy Me a Coffee. Your support helps us improve our videos every day and always offer the best content. If you would like to support us, the link is in the first pinned comment. Continue this moment of spiritual elevation and watch the recommended video that is appearing on the screen now, or follow the playlist of the Secrets of the Chosen. Just click on the screen and expand your essence even further. Thank you very much for being here and for being part of this community. See you in the next video.